Emily Chen was running precisely 17 minutes late, and in the cutthroat world of Boston job interviews, that might as well be 17 years. She drummed her fingers against the steering wheel of her aging Prius, which was currently trapped in a sea of morning traffic that stretched ahead like an endless metal river. Come on, she muttered, checking her watch for the fifth time in 30 seconds. The dashboard clock read 8:43, and her interview at Horizon Digital was scheduled for 9 sharp. In theory, she could still make it, if every traffic light turned green, if all pedestrians spontaneously decided to stay home, and if the laws of physics took a brief holiday. Emily took a deep breath and tried to channel the meditation techniques her roommate Rachel was always preaching about. Breathe in positivity, breathe out stress, she whispered to herself, then immediately ruined the effect by honking at a Lexus that had dared to inch into her lane. The truth was, this wasn't just any interview. Horizon Digital represented everything Emily had been working toward since graduating with her marketing degree 3 years ago. The company was innovative, growing rapidly, and had the kind of culture that actually seemed genuine, rather than artificially manufactured for recruitment videos. Plus, the salary range would finally let her move out of the apartment she shared with 3 other people. Traffic inched forward, and Emily used the moment to check her appearance in the rearview mirror. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, professional, but still showing off her best feature. Her makeup was subtle, just enough to hide the fact that she'd been up until 2 in the morning researching Horizon Digital and rehearsing answers to potential interview questions. The crisp white blouse and navy blazer were as wrinkle-free as 20 minutes with a travel steamer could make them. She looked good, prepared, like someone who deserved a shot at her dream job, if only she could actually get there. The traffic light ahead turned red again, and Emily let out a groan that came from the depths of her soul. She was contemplating the feasibility of abandoning her car and sprinting the remaining miles when a low rumble caught her attention. A sleek black motorcycle pulled up beside her, smoothly navigating the narrow space between lanes that her Prius could never dream of squeezing through. The rider was tall and broad-shouldered, clad in a fitted black leather jacket that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The helmet visor was down, obscuring any view of the face behind it. Emily normally wouldn't have paid much attention. Motorcycles weaving through traffic were as common in Boston as overly aggressive drivers and passive-aggressive pedestrians. But something about the rider's confident posture caught her eye. There was an ease to the way he balanced the powerful machine, one booted foot resting lightly on the pavement. As if sensing her attention, the rider turned his head slightly toward her. Emily quickly looked away, embarrassed to be caught staring. She fixed her eyes straight ahead, determined to focus on the problem at hand: how to bend space and time to reach her interview. The traffic light remained stubbornly red, and the seconds ticked by with excruciating slowness. Emily's phone buzzed with a text from Rachel: "Crush this interview." Despite her anxiety, Emily smiled. Rachel's enthusiasm was always accompanied by an excessive use of emojis. She was typing a quick thanks when she felt it again, that sensation of being watched. She glanced to her right. The motorcycle rider had lifted his visor, revealing a pair of startlingly blue eyes, crinkled in what appeared to be amusement. He nodded at her, a small, acknowledging gesture. Maybe it was the stress of the morning, or the 3 espresso shots she'd downed for breakfast, but something reckless flickered to life inside Emily. She smiled back. Not her polite interview smile or her customer service smile, but a real one that crinkled the corners of her eyes. The rider's posture shifted subtly, as if surprised by her response. The light turned green, but the cars ahead barely moved. Emily sighed dramatically, making sure it was visible through her window. To her surprise, the motorcyclist responded with a sympathetic shrug. He gestured at the traffic ahead with a gloved hand, then pointed to his wrist where a watch would be, raising his shoulders in a silent question. Late for something? Emily nodded emphatically, then held her thumb and forefinger close together. Just a little bit. She pointed ahead and made a zooming motion with her hand. Need to get there fast. The rider tapped his helmet in understanding, then surprised her by mimicking a person running, his fingers sprinting through the air. Emily laughed out loud. Was she really having a game of charades with a stranger in traffic? The cars inched forward again. Emily glanced at the time, 8:47. 12 minutes until her future was decided, and she was still at least 15 minutes away. The motorcycle pulled ahead slightly, then back, as if the rider was considering something. He turned toward her again and mimed what looked like opening a book, then pointed to her. Emily frowned, confused. Reading, study. Oh, he was asking about her job or what she was late for. She pointed to herself, then pretended to type on a keyboard, then made a sweeping gesture meant to indicate a big company. She followed with a pantomime of shaking hands. Job interview. The rider gave her a thumbs up, then pointed ahead and made a cross-fingers gesture. Good luck. The unexpected interaction had momentarily distracted Emily from her panic, but a quick glance at her watch sent it rushing back. 8:49. Even if she called ahead to warn them, showing up late made a terrible first impression. The light changed again, and this time the traffic began to move with slightly more purpose. The motorcycle revved beside her, ready to speed ahead through the opening, but the rider hesitated. He turned to Emily once more and gestured at the road opening ahead, then gave her another thumbs up. You've got this. It was such a small thing, a moment of connection, a stranger's encouragement, but it hit Emily with unexpected force. Her anxiety receded just enough for her determination to surge forward. She smiled and mouthed, "Thank you," through the window. The rider nodded, but instead of speeding away, he remained alongside her Prius as the traffic continued to crawl forward. At the next red light, he turned toward her again, this time making an exaggerated thinking face, followed by placing his hand over his heart and then pointing to her. The gesture was so unexpected that Emily felt warmth rising to her cheeks. Was he flirting with her? The situation was absurd. She was running late to the most important interview of her career, trapped in Boston morning traffic, exchanging silent signals with a mysterious motorcyclist whose face she couldn't even see properly. And yet, there was something oddly freeing about it. This man was a stranger. She'd likely never see him again after their paths diverged in traffic. There were no consequences, no awkwardness, no potential workplace complications. So when he made another gesture, pointing to himself, then drawing a question mark in the air, Emily took a chance. She reached for the notebook in her passenger seat, scribbled quickly, and held the paper up to her window. Emily, late for future. You? The motorcyclist seemed to laugh behind his helmet. He patted his pockets as if looking for something to write with, then simply pointed to himself and held up 5 fingers, then made a circular motion. 5. Circle? 5 rounds? Oh, Jack. His name was Jack. The light changed again, and this time the traffic began to flow more steadily. They were approaching an intersection where Emily needed to turn right, while the main flow of traffic continued straight. Her mystery companion seemed to notice this too, gesturing toward her turn signal with what looked like disappointment. In a moment of absolute impulsivity, Emily grabbed her notebook again. With quick strokes, she wrote her phone number in large digits, adding a simple message. "Better luck next traffic jam." She held it up just as they reached the turning point, watching his reaction through his visor. His posture straightened in surprise, and he actually missed a beat before smoothly accelerating as the traffic finally began to move. The last Emily saw of him, he was raising a hand in what might have been a salute or a promise before speeding ahead and disappearing into the flow of vehicles. Heart pounding with the unexpected thrill of the encounter, Emily made her right turn and pressed the gas with new determination. Her GPS now showed her arrival time as 8:58. She might just make it. 20 minutes later, Emily sat in the sleek reception area of Horizon Digital, her earlier traffic adventure feeling like something from another life. The company's offices occupied 5 floors of one of Boston's newest skyscrapers, all glass and steel and breathtaking views. The reception area alone spoke of success. Minimalist furniture in soothing grays and blues, walls adorned with digital screens displaying the company's award-winning campaigns, and a subtle fragrance that managed to suggest both innovation and stability. Ms. Chen, the receptionist, a polished woman in her 30s with an impressive cascade of silver bangles on one wrist, smiled at her. "Mr. Reynolds will see you now." Emily stood, smoothing her blazer and taking a deep breath. Mr. Reynolds, the CEO himself. According to her research, Jack Reynolds had inherited his father's struggling tech company 7 years ago and transformed it into Horizon Digital, now valued at over $300 million. He was notoriously private. There were few photos of him online, and he rarely gave interviews. What was known was that he had an eye for talent, a ruthless business acumen, and expectations that bordered on impossible. And now he would be conducting her interview personally. Emily hadn't expected that. Usually initial interviews were handled by HR or department heads. The receptionist led her down a corridor lined with glass-walled conference rooms, each named after a different celestial body. They passed Mars and Jupiter, before stopping at Saturn, where the receptionist knocked lightly before opening the door. "Emily Chen for you, Mr. Reynolds," she announced, stepping aside. Emily walked in with her most confident stride, professional smile already in place, and froze. Sitting at the head of the conference table, still wearing the fitted black leather jacket from earlier, was her motorcyclist. Jack Reynolds looked up from the tablet he'd been studying, and those now familiar blue eyes widened with recognition. There was a moment, just a fraction of a second, where genuine surprise registered on his face before it was replaced by cool professionalism. "Ms. Chen," he said, standing and extending his hand. His voice was deep and controlled, betraying nothing of their earlier interaction. "Right on time. I appreciate punctuality." Emily's brain short-circuited. This couldn't be happening. The mysterious, flirtatious stranger from traffic was Jack Reynolds. The Jack Reynolds, CEO of Horizon Digital and possibly her future boss. The man she had impulsively given her phone number to less than an hour ago. Somehow, she managed to step forward and shake his hand, her training in professional situations kicking in despite the internal chaos. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Reynolds," she heard herself say. "I'm very excited to learn more about the position." If she'd been hoping for some acknowledgement of their traffic encounter, a smile, a wink, anything, she was disappointed. Jack Reynolds gestured for her to take a seat, his expression revealing nothing but polite interest. "Let's begin, shall we?" he said, picking up his tablet again. "Tell me why Horizon Digital needs someone like you, Ms. Chen." As Emily launched into her carefully prepared answer, one thought kept circling in her mind. She had flirted with, and given her phone number to, the CEO of her dream company. This was either going to be the most embarrassing job interview of her life or the beginning of something far more complicated than she'd bargained for. Jack Reynolds listened to Emily's response with perfect attention, his face betraying nothing of the turmoil beneath his composed exterior. Of all the candidates he'd interviewed that week, he would never have expected the woman from traffic to walk through his door, the woman whose smile had inexplicably brightened his typically tedious morning commute. As she spoke about her experience in digital marketing and her ideas for Horizon's upcoming campaigns, Jack found himself noticing details he shouldn't be focusing on. The way her hands moved expressively when she made an important point, how her eyes lit up when she discussed creative strategy, the slight dimple that appeared in her left cheek when she smiled. He forced his attention back to her qualifications. Emily Chen was good, very good. Her portfolio showed creativity and strategic thinking, and her references were impeccable. She would be an asset to the company regardless of their bizarre first encounter. The question was whether he could separate that encounter from his professional judgment, and whether she could work effectively knowing what had transpired between them. As Emily concluded her answer, Jack leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. "Impressive background, Ms. Chen, but let me ask you something more situational." He paused, watching her carefully. "How well do you handle unexpected circumstances, situations that don't follow the conventional script?" Emily's eyes widened just slightly, the first indication that she was thinking about their traffic encounter, but she recovered quickly. "I believe adaptability is essential in marketing and in life, Mr. Reynolds," she replied, meeting his gaze directly. "The most interesting opportunities often come from unexpected moments. The key is recognizing them and responding with both spontaneity and strategy." A perfect answer, professional, yet subtly acknowledging what had happened without explicitly mentioning it. Despite himself, Jack was impressed. "Well put, Miss Chen," he said. Then, unable to resist, "Would you say you're someone who makes impulsive decisions, or do you prefer to analyze all options before taking action?" The question hung in the air between them, both of them aware of the subtext. Emily took a small breath, but her voice was steady when she answered, "I believe in informed intuition, Mr. Reynolds. I do my research and understand the landscape, which then allows me to make quick decisions when necessary. Sometimes the most authentic choices happen in moments where overthinking would only get in the way." Jack found himself wanting to smile, but maintained his neutral expression. This was dangerous territory, and he needed to steer the interview back to safer ground. "Let's discuss your experience with integrated campaigns," he said, glancing down at his notes. "Your work for Stellar Beverages was particularly noteworthy." The remainder of the interview proceeded professionally, with no further allusions to their traffic encounter. Emily's responses were thoughtful and articulate, confirming what her resume had suggested. She was exactly the kind of talent Horizon needed. As their time came to a close, Jack stood and extended his hand once more. "Thank you for coming in, Ms. Chen. HR will be in touch regarding next steps." Emily's hand was warm and her grip confident as she shook his. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Reynolds. I look forward to hearing from you." For a moment they stood there, hands connected a fraction longer than professionally necessary, the unspoken reality of their first meeting hovering between them. Then Emily released his hand and gathered her portfolio, her composure intact. "Have a good day," she said, and walked toward the door. "Ms. Chen," Jack called just before she reached it. She turned, a question in her eyes. "Welcome to Horizon Digital," he said. "HR will send the formal offer this afternoon. You start Monday." Surprise and delight flashed across her face before she reined it in. "Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. I won't disappoint you." As she left, Jack sat back down, staring at the closed door. In his 15 years of business experience, he'd never made such an immediate hiring decision. The rational part of his brain argued that Emily Chen was objectively exceptional and would be an asset to the marketing team. The less rational part, the part he usually ignored, whispered that there had been something about her. Something genuine and unexpected from that first shared smile in traffic. Jack pulled out his phone, looking at the number he'd carefully memorized from her notebook. He should delete it, maintain professional boundaries, forget the brief connection they'd shared before knowing who each other was. Instead, he saved it to his contacts, adding just a single word as the identifier: traffic. Whatever was happening here, Jack had the distinct feeling that his carefully ordered life was about to encounter some unexpected detours. Emily collapsed onto her couch, kicked off her heels, and let out a scream into the nearest throw pillow. "That good, huh?" Rachel appeared in the doorway of their shared apartment, spoon in one hand and a half-eaten container of yogurt in the other. Her curly red hair was piled on top of her head in what she called a creative bun, but what more closely resembled a bird's nest after a windstorm. "I got the job," Emily said, her voice muffled by the pillow. Rachel squealed and did a little dance that threatened to send yogurt flying across their small living room. "I knew it! I told you! My tarot cards predicted a major career advancement this month." Emily lowered the pillow and gave her roommate a look. "Your cards also predicted I'd meet a mysterious stranger who would change my life." "And did you?" Rachel asked, wiggling her eyebrows suggestively. Emily groaned and covered her face again. "You have no idea." Over the next 20 minutes, Emily recounted the entire surreal morning, from the traffic flirtation to the moment she realized her mysterious motorcyclist was none other than Jack Reynolds, CEO of Horizon Digital, and now her boss. By the time she finished, Rachel had abandoned her yogurt and was sitting cross-legged on their coffee table, her eyes wide. "This is literally the plot of every romance novel I've ever read. You're living the dream." "I'm living a nightmare," Emily corrected her. "I gave my phone number to my boss before he was my boss. I flirted with him through a car window. How am I supposed to go into work on Monday and act like a professional?" "Maybe you don't have to," Rachel suggested. "Maybe this is the start of a beautiful workplace romance." Emily threw the pillow at her. "Absolutely not. This is my dream job, Rachel. I've worked too hard to be seen as the girl who's sleeping with the boss." "You're not sleeping with him," Rachel pointed out. "Yet." "And I won't be," Emily insisted. "Even if he weren't my boss, which he is, guys like Jack Reynolds don't date girls like me. He's a self-made millionaire who's been on the cover of Business Innovators magazine. I still have student loans and buy my work clothes at outlet sales." Rachel sighed dramatically. "You're missing the point. The universe created this meet-cute specifically for you two. You can't fight destiny." "Watch me," Emily said, reaching for her laptop. "I need to prep for Monday. I want to walk in there so professional and competent that he forgets our little traffic encounter ever happened." "Good luck with that," Rachel said, retrieving her abandoned yogurt. "Men don't forget women who intrigue them. It's like their one superpower." As Emily immersed herself in research about Horizon Digital's current campaigns, she tried to ignore the flutter in her stomach every time she thought about those blue eyes, looking at her from behind a motorcycle helmet visor. It was just a job. A really good job that could change the trajectory of her career. She wasn't going to complicate it with inappropriate feelings for her new boss, no matter how good he looked in that leather jacket. Monday morning arrived with the cruel efficiency of an alarm clock after too little sleep. Emily had spent the weekend alternating between excitement about her new position and anxiety about facing Jack Reynolds again. She'd prepared meticulously, researching the company's current projects, planning her first-day outfit with military precision, and rehearsing professionally distant greetings in her bathroom mirror. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds." Too formal. "Morning, Jack." Too familiar. "Hello, sir." Definitely too much. She settled on a simple, confident good morning with direct eye contact and a professional nod. No hint of their traffic interaction, no acknowledgement of any connection beyond employer and employee. The Horizon Digital offices were just as impressive on her second visit. Emily arrived 30 minutes early, clutching a travel mug of coffee that was more for comfort than caffeine. The receptionist, Vivian, according to the welcome email HR had sent, recognized her immediately. "Emily, welcome to your first day," she said warmly. "Melissa from HR will be down in a few minutes to get you set up. Feel free to help yourself to coffee or tea in the meantime." She gestured toward a sleek refreshment station in the corner of the reception area. "Thank you," Emily said, trying to project confidence rather than the first-day jitters that were actually making her knees wobble slightly. "I'm looking forward to getting started." As Emily waited, she observed the morning rhythm of Horizon. Employees arrived in waves, most dressed in what could be called creative professional, stylish but not stuffy, innovative but still business-appropriate. They greeted each other with the easy familiarity of people who enjoyed their workplace culture. Several nodded to Emily with curious smiles, clearly wondering about the new face. At precisely 8:45, A woman with a geometric bob and vibrant yellow glasses approached. "Emily Chen, I'm Melissa Wong, HR Director. Welcome aboard." The next hour passed in a blur of paperwork, introductions and orientation. Melissa was efficient but friendly, walking Emily through everything from benefits packages to the sacred rules of the office refrigerator. Finally, she led Emily to the fourth floor, the marketing department. "And here's your desk," Melissa said, gesturing to a workspace by a large window with a view of the Boston skyline. "You'll be working under Marcus Thompson, our marketing director, but he's in meetings all morning. Your team lead, Diana, should be here shortly to get you up to speed." Emily set down her messenger bag, already feeling more at ease. This was familiar territory, a desk, a computer, a job to do. She could handle this. "Oh, and Jack asked to see you once you're settled," Melissa added casually. "His office is on the top floor. Vivian can direct you when you're ready." And just like that, Emily's newfound confidence evaporated. Jack wanted to see her on her first day. Was that normal, or was it because of their history? "Great, thank you," she managed to say in what she hoped was a casual tone. "Is there a specific time I should go up?" "He just said this morning, whenever you're ready," Melissa replied, already checking something on her phone. "I've got to run to another new hire. Diana should be here any minute. Good luck on your first day." Left alone, Emily sat at her new desk and took a deep breath. It was fine. This was probably standard procedure. The CEO checking in with new hires. Nothing unusual. She was arranging her few personal items, a small potted succulent, a photo of her parents, a sleek desk calendar, when a whirlwind in human form appeared beside her desk. "You must be Emily. I'm Diana Park, Senior Marketing Strategist, and your team lead for the foreseeable future. Welcome to the madhouse." The woman speaking was perhaps in her mid-30s, with short black hair streaked with purple, sharp cat-eye glasses, and an energy that seemed to vibrate the air around her. Emily stood to shake her hand. "It's great to meet you, Diana. I'm excited to be here." "We're excited to have you," Diana said, perching on the edge of Emily's desk. "Your portfolio was impressive, particularly that campaign for the indie cosmetics brand. Very innovative use of micro-influencers." "Thank you," Emily said, genuinely pleased that Diana had actually looked at her work. "So, game plan for today?" Diana continued, talking rapidly. "I'll introduce you to the team, get you access to all our project management systems, and then we'll dive into the Oasis Beverages pitch. It's our biggest potential client this quarter, and we present next Monday. No pressure." She grinned, revealing a small gap between her front teeth that somehow made her even more charming. "Sounds perfect," Emily said, already feeling better. This was why she was here: the work, the creative challenges, the opportunity to prove herself. "Oh, and Jack wants to see you this morning," Diana added, "which is unusual. He normally leaves the new hires to us peasants." Emily tried not to visibly tense. "Yes, Melissa mentioned that. Any idea what it's about?" Diana shrugged. "With Jack, who knows? He's brilliant but enigmatic. Probably wants to make sure his personal hire is settling in okay." "Personal hire?" Emily repeated, her voice rising slightly. "Well, yeah. Word around the office is he made the decision to hire you on the spot after your interview. That never happens. There's usually a committee and at least 3 rounds. Consider yourself special." Diana winked. "But don't worry, nobody resents you for it." Much. Before Emily could process this new information, Diana was pulling her to her feet. "Come on, let's meet the team. Then you can go face the big boss." The next hour was a whirlwind of introductions. The marketing department consisted of 15 people divided into 3 teams, each focused on different client sectors. Emily's team handled beverage, food, and lifestyle brands, areas where she had the most experience. Her teammates seemed friendly and talented, though she caught a few curious glances that made her wonder how widespread the knowledge of her special hiring was. By 10:30, Diana had shown her the basics of Horizon's project management systems and given her access to the Oasis Beverages brief. Take some time to review this, and then we can discuss your initial thoughts this afternoon, Diana said. But first, you should probably head up to see Jack, 5th floor, end of the hall. You can't miss it. His office is the one with the unnecessarily intimidating double doors. Emily nodded, trying to appear casual. Right, I'll head up now. As she rode the elevator to the 5th floor, Emily mentally rehearsed her professional demeanor once more. Whatever had happened in traffic was an anomaly, a strange coincidence. From now on, their relationship would be strictly professional. The 5th floor was noticeably different from the rest of the building. While the lower floors hummed with creative energy and collaborative spaces, this level radiated quiet power. The carpet was thicker, the lighting more subdued, the artwork on the walls original and likely expensive. At the end of the hallway stood the double doors Diana had mentioned. Emily approached the assistant's desk positioned outside, where a young man with immaculate style was typing rapidly on a sleek keyboard. "Excuse me," Emily said. "I'm Emily Chen from marketing. Mr. Reynolds asked to see me." The assistant looked up, his expression brightening with interest. "Ah, the famous Emily Chen. I'm Tyler, Jack's long-suffering assistant and keeper of his impossible schedule." He extended a manicured hand, which Emily shook. "He's expecting you. Go right in." Famous? Emily wanted to ask what he meant, but Tyler had already pressed a button on his desk, and one of the double doors swung open slightly. Taking a deep breath, Emily pushed the door and entered Jack Reynolds's domain. The office was not what she expected. Given the imposing entrance, she had anticipated something ostentatious, perhaps all glass and chrome with commanding views and power furniture. Instead, the space felt almost comfortable. One wall was indeed glass, offering a spectacular view of Boston, but the rest of the room was warm wood paneling, filled with bookshelves housing actual books rather than decorative objects. A large desk occupied one end, but the focal point was a sitting area with leather chairs and a coffee table strewn with documents and what appeared to be prototype designs. Jack stood by the window, his back to her, speaking quietly on his phone. He was dressed in charcoal slacks and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing strong forearms. Gone was the leather jacket, but the confident posture was instantly familiar. "I understand the concern, Senator, but I believe our approach addresses the privacy issues while still providing the functionality your constituents need," he was saying. "The encrypted data—" He turned and saw Emily, his sentence cutting off mid-word. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, pleasure, before his professional mask slipped back into place. "Let me call you back this afternoon," he said into the phone. "My 10:30 is here." He ended the call and placed the phone on his desk, then turned to face Emily fully. "Ms. Chen, welcome to your first day." Emily squared her shoulders. "Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me." Breeze. For a moment they simply looked at each other, the ghost of their traffic encounter hovering in the air between them. Then Jack gestured to one of the leather chairs. "Please sit and call me Jack. Everyone does." Emily sat, smoothing her skirt and folding her hands in her lap. "Then please call me Emily." Jack nodded, taking the chair opposite hers rather than retreating behind his desk. The choice felt deliberate, less hierarchical, more conversational. "Emily," he said, as if testing how her name felt. "How are you finding your first morning at Horizon?" "Excellent so far," she replied honestly. "Diana's been very helpful and everyone seems welcoming. I'm looking forward to diving into the Oasis project." "Good. Diana is one of our best." Jack leaned back slightly, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp and focused on her. "I wanted to touch base personally because your hiring was unconventional." Here it was, the acknowledgement of their previous encounter. Emily maintained her professional composure. "I understand. I want to assure you that I'm here because of my qualifications and what I can bring to Horizon. Our prior interaction doesn't have to complicate things." A hint of amusement touched Jack's lips. "Our prior interaction." That's one way to put it. He leaned forward slightly. Let me be clear, Emily. You're here because you're exceptionally talented. Your portfolio speaks for itself, and your references were glowing. The fact that we happened to meet under unusual circumstances doesn't change that. Emily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. I appreciate that. That said, Jack continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone, I do think we should address what happened to avoid any potential awkwardness. Emily nodded, waiting for him to continue. Jack ran a hand through his dark hair, and for the first time she saw a crack in his composed demeanor. I don't make a habit of exchanging contact information with strangers in traffic. Neither do I, Emily admitted. It was completely out of character for me. For me as well, Jack said. His blue eyes held hers. But I think we can agree it was a moment of spontaneity that doesn't need to impact our professional relationship. Absolutely, Emily agreed quickly. It was just a strange coincidence, and now we can move forward as colleagues. She hesitated, then added, though I will say, if I'd known who you were, I probably wouldn't have written down my phone number. To her surprise, Jack actually smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his serious face. If I'd known who you were, I probably would have given you mine. The statement hung in the air between them, charged with possibilities that neither of them could afford to explore. Emily broke the moment, shifting back to safer ground. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to work at Horizon. I won't let you down. Jack nodded, the professional mask sliding back into place. I don't believe you will. He stood, signaling the end of their meeting. The Oasis account is a priority. I'll be interested in hearing your thoughts once you've reviewed the brief. Emily rose as well, extending her hand. Thank you, Jack. He took her hand, his grip firm and warm. For the briefest moment, she felt the same connection they'd shared through car and motorcycle windows. A spark of something genuine and unplanned in a world where everything else was carefully calculated. Welcome to Horizon, Emily, he said, releasing her hand. I look forward to seeing what you bring to the team. As Emily left the office, nodding to Tyler on her way out, she felt both relieved and strangely disappointed. They had established clear boundaries, as they should have. Their brief connection in traffic was now acknowledged and properly filed away as an amusing coincidence, nothing more. So why did she feel like something significant had just been carefully packed away before it could even begin? Jack stared at the closed door of his office long after Emily had left. The meeting had gone exactly as it should have. Professional, straightforward, establishing appropriate boundaries. So why did he feel so unsettled? There was something about Emily Chen that disrupted his carefully constructed equilibrium. It wasn't just her obvious talent or the strange circumstances of their meeting. It was the authenticity she radiated, a quality rare enough in the corporate world to be immediately noticeable. His phone buzzed with a text from his younger sister, Mia. Did you meet with the traffic girl yet? Jack sighed. He'd made the mistake of mentioning the coincidence to Mia over their weekly Sunday dinner, and she'd been insufferably interested ever since. Yes, meeting went fine. Professional boundaries established, he texted back. Mia's response was immediate. Boring. Where's your sense of romance? Buried under 15 years of business experience and common sense, he replied. You're 35, not 90. Live a little. Jack put his phone down without responding. Mia didn't understand, couldn't understand, the complexities of his position. As CEO, he couldn't afford distractions or workplace complications. Horizon was his life's work, the legacy he'd built from the ruins of his father's failed company. Everything he did reflected on the business and its 400 employees. Besides, he'd learned the hard way that mixing personal and professional rarely ended well. His last serious relationship had been with a woman who turned out to be more interested in his company's client list than in him personally. The resulting business fallout had taught him a valuable lesson about keeping strict boundaries. His phone rang, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Marcus Thompson, his marketing director. Jack, got a minute? I wanted to discuss the new hire, Marcus said when Jack answered. Emily Chen, what about her? Just wondering about the expedited process. Not questioning your judgment, of course, but it's unusual to bypass the standard hiring protocols. Jack frowned. Was his decision already being scrutinized? Her qualifications are exceptional, Marcus. I saw no reason to delay when we've been trying to strengthen the beverage and lifestyle team for months. Fair enough, Marcus said, though he sounded less than convinced. Diana's already integrating her into the Oasis pitch. I just hope she can get up to speed quickly. The timeline is tight. She will, Jack said, with more certainty than he perhaps should have felt after knowing Emily for such a short time. Keep me updated on the Oasis progress. I want to review the concepts before next week's presentation. After ending the call, Jack turned to the window, gazing out at the Boston skyline. The city was vibrant below him, people moving with purpose through their Monday routines. Somewhere down there, 7 years ago, he'd been just another entrepreneur with big dreams and a failing company inherited from his father. Now he stood at the helm of one of Boston's fastest-growing digital marketing firms, with clients ranging from local startups to international corporations. He'd worked relentlessly to build Horizon, sacrificing personal relationships and any semblance of a normal life along the way. He couldn't allow himself to be distracted by inappropriate thoughts about an employee, no matter how intriguing she might be. Emily Chen was talented, and she would be an asset to Horizon. That was all that mattered. Jack returned to his desk and the mountain of work awaiting him, deliberately pushing thoughts of traffic encounters and phone numbers from his mind. He had a company to run, and romantic entanglements had no place in his carefully ordered world. But as he reviewed quarterly projections and client proposals, one thought kept surfacing despite his best efforts to suppress it. For the first time in years, he'd felt a genuine connection with someone. Not because of his position or his company, but simply as himself, a man on a motorcycle, communicating through gestures and smiles with a woman whose laugh had somehow brightened the tedium of Boston traffic. And now, having established the proper professional boundaries, he'd ensured that whatever might have sparked between them would never have the chance to ignite. It was the right decision. The only decision. So why did it feel like he'd just deliberately taken a wrong turn? By lunchtime, Emily had immersed herself in the Oasis Beverages project, grateful for the distraction of actual work. The brand was a premium craft soda and mixer company looking to expand their market share among health-conscious millennials and Gen Z consumers. Exactly the kind of challenge Emily enjoyed. Earth to Emily. Diana's voice broke through her concentration. It's 1 o'clock. Human bodies require sustenance, even creative ones. Emily looked up from her computer, blinking as she refocused on her surroundings. Sorry, I got caught up in the Oasis data. Diana grinned. I figured. Come on, the team usually eats together on Mondays. It's tradition. Emily followed Diana to a bright corner of the office, with several tables pushed together. 4 other people from their team were already assembled, lunch containers open in front of them. Everyone, official introduction time, Diana announced. This is Emily Chen, our new digital strategy specialist and Jack's mysterious traffic buddy. Emily nearly choked on air. What? How did you... The entire table erupted in interested murmurs. So it's true, exclaimed a tall man with a neatly trimmed beard. Tyler was telling everyone about it this morning, but we thought he was exaggerating. He usually is. Tyler needs to learn about confidentiality, Emily muttered, feeling her face grow warm. Diana patted her shoulder sympathetically. Welcome to Horizon, where privacy goes to die. We're basically a small village with high-speed internet and ergonomic chairs. She gestured around the table. This is Aiden, our copywriting genius. Zoe, who makes art directors weep with her design skills. James, our data wizard. And Priya, who handles client relations and keeps us from saying inappropriate things during presentations. Each person nodded or waved as Diana introduced them. They seemed friendly, but Emily could feel their curiosity like a tangible force. So, Zoe said, leaning forward with undisguised interest, what exactly happened in traffic? The rumor mill has produced at least 7 different versions. Emily sighed, realizing there was no escape. Better to give them the real story than let speculation run wild. It was nothing dramatic, she said, unpacking her lunch, a simple turkey sandwich and an apple. I was stuck in traffic on the way to my interview. Jack pulled up next to me on his motorcycle. We communicated through our windows. I was late for what I thought was an important interview, not realizing it was actually with him. That's it. End of story. That is not the end of the story, Aidan protested. Tyler says Jack was smiling when you left his office this morning. Jack never smiles before noon on Mondays. It's like a law of physics. Tyler should focus more on his job and less on office gossip, Emily said firmly, though she couldn't help feeling a tiny flutter at the idea that Jack had been smiling after their meeting. She's right, Priya said, coming to Emily's rescue. How about we focus on the fact that Emily is here to help us win the Oasis account, not on her personal interactions with the boss? Thank you, Emily said gratefully. Though if you do end up dating him, we expect exclusive insider information, Priya added with a wink. That's not going to happen, Emily insisted, taking a bite of her sandwich to avoid further comment. Of course not, Diana agreed, a little too quickly. Because Jack doesn't date employees. It's his one unbreakable rule. That and no Comic Sans in presentations. Both very reasonable rules, Emily said, relieved that at least that fact was established. It made the boundaries even clearer. Not that she'd been considering crossing them. Much. Anyway, James spoke up, mercifully changing the subject. What do you think of the Oasis data? I've been trying to convince everyone that they're missing an opportunity with the 35 to 50 demographic. The conversation shifted to work, and Emily found herself engaged in a lively debate about target audiences and market penetration. Her new teammates were sharp and insightful, building on each other's ideas with the easy rhythm of people who respected each other's contributions. By the time lunch ended, Emily felt more at ease. Yes, her unusual introduction to Jack Reynolds would probably be office gossip for a while, but ultimately she would be judged on her work, not her traffic encounters. As they returned to their desks, Diana hung back to walk beside Emily. Sorry about the ambush, she said quietly. They mean well, but subtlety isn't our department's strong suit. It's okay, Emily assured her. Better to address it directly than have it lurking unspoken. Diana nodded. For what it's worth, Jack's rule about not dating employees, it's not just professional ethics. There's history there. Emily raised an eyebrow, curious despite herself. History? Dut. About 3 years ago, he was involved with someone who ended up working for a competitor and taking some clients with her, Diana explained. It was messy. Since then, he's kept his personal and professional lives completely separate. That makes sense, Emily said, trying to ignore the pang of disappointment the information caused. Not that it mattered. She had no intention of pursuing anything with Jack Reynolds. Her career came first, always. Anyway, Diana continued, team meeting at 3 to discuss Oasis concepts. Bring your initial thoughts and don't worry if they're still rough. Monday is for brainstorming, Tuesday is for refining, Wednesday is for designing, Thursday is for panicking, and Friday is for pretending we're not panicking. Emily laughed. Sounds like a solid weekly structure. As Diana headed to her own desk, Emily settled back into her work, determined to prove that Jack Reynolds had made the right decision in hiring her, regardless of their unconventional first meeting. She had just opened a new document to outline her initial concept when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I hope your first day is going well. The Oasis team is lucky to have you. Traffic. Emily stared at the message, her heart doing a ridiculous little skip in her chest. Against all professional judgment, against all common sense, against all her own rules, she smiled and saved the number to her contacts. Some traffic jams, it seemed, had unexpected consequences long after the light turned green. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of creative meetings, late nights, and increasing pressure as the Oasis Beverages pitch approached. Emily quickly integrated into her team, her ideas earning respect and her work ethic matching the demanding pace of Horizon Digital. Jack remained professionally distant, though Emily occasionally caught him observing her during company-wide meetings or when he stopped by the marketing department. Their text exchanges were brief and infrequent, always work-related with just enough personal warmth to acknowledge their unusual connection without crossing any boundaries. "Good morning, team," Diana announced, clapping her hands as she entered the conference room on Thursday morning, 3 days before the Oasis presentation. "We have a special guest today." Jack walked in behind her, nodding to the assembled team. Emily felt the familiar flutter in her stomach that his presence always triggered, despite her best efforts to suppress it. "Jack wanted to review our final concepts before Monday's pitch," Diana explained. "Don't let me interrupt your normal process," Jack said, taking a seat at the far end of the table. His eyes briefly met Emily's before moving on. "I'm just here to observe." The team proceeded with their planned discussion, but Emily could feel the tension in the room. Jack's presence changed the dynamic, making everyone slightly more formal, slightly more cautious. "Emily, why don't you walk us through your concept?" Diana suggested, turning the floor over to her. Taking a deep breath, Emily stood and moved to the front of the room. This was her moment to prove herself, to show Jack, her team, and herself that she belonged at Horizon. Oasis has been positioning itself as a premium alternative to mass-market sodas, she began, pulling up her presentation slides. But they're missing what makes them truly unique. It's not just about being premium, it's about being authentic. As she outlined her concept, a campaign centered around moments of authenticity that would showcase real people enjoying Oasis beverages in genuine moments of connection, Emily felt her confidence growing. This was her element, where traffic flirtations and complicated workplace dynamics faded away. The campaign would span digital, social, and limited physical placements, with user-generated content as a central component, she continued. "We create a movement, not just an advertisement." When she finished presenting, there was a moment of silence before Aidan spoke up. "I love this. It gives us so much to work with from a narrative perspective." "The data supports targeting these authentic connection moments," James added, "especially after the isolation of recent years." Emily glanced at Jack, trying to read his expression. His face remained carefully neutral, but there was something in his eyes, a focus, an intensity that made her heart beat faster. "Thoughts, Jack?" Diana prompted. Jack leaned forward slightly. "It's a strong concept. I particularly like the emphasis on authenticity. It aligns with what we know about Oasis's brand values." He paused. "But I wonder if we're being bold enough. This is our chance to really differentiate them in the market." "What do you suggest?" Emily asked, meeting his gaze directly. A hint of a smile touched Jack's lips. "I'm not suggesting anything specific. Just challenging you to push further. What's the most authentic version of this concept?" The question lingered in the air, and Emily felt it was directed at her specifically, not just about the campaign, but about something more personal. "I'll work on it," she promised. After the meeting, as the team dispersed to refine their concepts based on the feedback, Jack approached Emily. "Do you have a minute?" he asked quietly. Emily nodded, ignoring the curious glances from her teammates as she followed Jack into the hallway. "Your concept is good," he said once they were alone. "Better than good. You have excellent instincts." "Thank you," Emily replied, trying to maintain her professional composure despite the warmth spreading through her at his praise. "But I meant what I said about pushing further," Jack continued. "Sometimes the most powerful ideas come when we're willing to take risks." He hesitated, then added, "When we step outside our comfort zones." Emily had the distinct feeling they weren't just talking about the Oasis campaign anymore. "Like giving your phone number to a stranger in traffic," she suggested, a hint of challenge in her voice. Jack's eyes widened slightly, then crinkled with amusement. Something like that. For a moment, they stood in silence, the air between them charged with unspoken possibilities. "I should get back to work," Emily said finally. "I have a campaign to make bolder." "I look forward to seeing what you come up with," Jack replied, his voice low enough that only she could hear. As she walked back to her desk, Emily felt both exhilarated and terrified. Jack Reynolds had challenged her professionally, and perhaps personally as well. The question was whether she was brave enough to respond to both challenges. Friday night found the marketing team working late, fueled by pizza and determination as they finalized the Oasis presentation. Emily had reworked her concept, taking Jack's challenge to heart and pushing herself to create something truly memorable. "This is it," Diana declared, looking at the final presentation on the conference room screen. "This is how we win Oasis." The team cheered tiredly, the collective exhaustion of the week giving way to satisfaction at what they'd accomplished. "We should celebrate," Zoe suggested. "Drinks at Vertex?" Everyone agreed enthusiastically. Everyone except Emily, who hesitated. "Come on, new girl," Aidan prodded. "It's tradition. We work ourselves to death all week, then drink away the pain on Friday." "Healthy coping mechanisms at their finest," Priya added with a laugh. Emily smiled, recognizing the invitation as the gesture of inclusion it was. "All right, I'm in. Let me just finish one thing." As the team packed up, chattering about weekend plans and Monday's presentation, Emily remained at her computer, making one final adjustment to her slides. She was so focused that she didn't notice the figure approaching until a shadow fell across her desk. "Still here?" Jack asked. Emily looked up, startled. "Just finishing some last-minute tweaks. The team's heading to Vertex to celebrate." Jack nodded. "Good idea, you've all earned it." He glanced at her screen. "May I?" Emily moved aside as Jack leaned in to look at her revised concept. He was close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and woodsy that reminded her of autumn. "You took my suggestion," he observed, scrolling through her presentation. "I did," Emily confirmed. "It was a good challenge." Jack straightened, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "This is excellent, Emily. You've taken it from good to remarkable." Before she could respond, Diana called from across the office. "Emily, we're heading out. You coming?" "Be right there," Emily called back. She turned to Jack. "Would you like to join us?" The invitation surprised them both. Jack's smile faded, replaced by that careful neutrality she was beginning to recognize as his professional shield. "I appreciate the offer, but I should let the team celebrate without the boss hovering," he said. "Another time, perhaps." Emily nodded, trying not to feel disappointed. "Of course. Have a good weekend, Jack." "You too, Emily," he replied, then added quietly, "I'm impressed by what you've brought to Horizon in such a short time." The simple praise warmed her more than it should have. Vertex was crowded with Friday night revelers, but the team had claimed a corner booth that seemed to be their regular spot. Emily sat between Diana and Zoe, nursing a gin and tonic as the conversation flowed around her. Office gossip, client stories, and increasingly ridiculous predictions about the Oasis presentation. "To Emily's brilliant concept," Diana declared, raising her glass. "Oasis won't know what hit them." Everyone cheered, clinking glasses, and Emily felt a surge of belonging. These people, talented, quirky, passionate, had welcomed her into their world without hesitation. "So," Aidan said, leaning across the table with exaggerated casualness, "what were you and the boss discussing so intensely earlier?" Emily rolled her eyes. "The presentation, obviously." "Looked pretty cozy to me," Zoe teased, "all hunched over your computer together." "You people have serious imagination issues," Emily retorted, though she couldn't help smiling. "Jack was just giving me feedback on my concept." "Jack, is it?" James wiggled his eyebrows. "Not Mr. Reynolds." "He asked everyone to call him Jack, as you well know," Emily pointed out. "True," Priya agreed Manu, "but not everyone gets personal texts from him." Emily nearly choked on her drink. "How did you—" "You really need to set up a passcode on your phone," Diana said with a grin. "It lit up on your desk the other day when he texted. Traffic isn't exactly a subtle contact name. Emily groaned, covering her face with her hands. You people are worse than my college roommates. We're invested in your happiness, Aidan declared solemnly, before breaking into laughter. There's nothing to invest in, Emily insisted. Jack and I have a strictly professional relationship. But do you want more? Zoe asked, suddenly serious. The question caught Emily off guard. Did she want more? The answer was complicated. Yes, there was something about Jack that drew her in. His intelligence, his quiet confidence, the rare glimpses of genuine emotion behind his professional facade. But there were so many reasons why anything beyond friendship was impossible. He was her boss. He had a strict policy against dating employees, and her career had to come first. It doesn't matter what I want, she said finally. Some traffic lights have to stay red. The table fell silent for a moment, her friends recognizing the truth in her words. Well, Diana said, raising her glass again, here's to professional boundaries and crushed dreams. They all laughed, and the conversation moved on to other topics. But as Emily sipped her drink, she couldn't help wondering what Jack was doing tonight. If he was working late as usual, or if he had a life outside Horizon that none of them knew about. And whether, in another reality where they'd met differently, that traffic light might have turned green. Monday morning arrived with the nervous energy that always accompanied major presentations. The team gathered early to review one last time, their usual banter subdued by pre-pitch jitters. Everything looks good, Diana assured them. We've got this. Emily's concept is stellar, the designs are perfect, and the data supports every claim. Emily nodded, trying to project confidence despite the butterflies in her stomach. This was her first big presentation at Horizon, and she needed it to be perfect. At 9:45, Jack appeared in the conference room doorway. The Oasis team just arrived. They're in the Saturn conference room. Ready? Diana gathered her tablet and stood. Ready as we'll ever be. Team, grab your materials. As they filed out of the room, Jack caught Emily's eye. Nervous? He asked quietly. A little, she admitted. First big pitch at a new company. You'll be great, he said, with such certainty that she almost believed him. Just be authentic, like your campaign. Emily smiled at the reference. Thanks, Jack. The Oasis executives were already seated when they entered the conference room. 4 men and 2 women in business casual attire, looking expectantly at the Horizon team. Jack made introductions, his voice confident and warm as he presented his team to the potential clients. And finally, Emily Chen, our newest digital strategy specialist who has led the creative direction for your campaign, Jack concluded, gesturing toward Emily. She stepped forward, shaking hands with each Oasis executive. I'm excited to share what we've developed, she said, meeting their gazes directly. The presentation began with Diana providing an overview of Horizon's approach and research findings. James followed with market analysis, and then it was Emily's turn. As she moved to the front of the room, Emily caught Jack watching her from his position at the side of the room. He gave her an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. Taking a deep breath, Emily launched into her presentation. At Horizon, we believe that what makes Oasis unique isn't just your premium ingredients or your craft approach. It's how your beverages create authentic moments of connection in a disconnected world. She clicked through to her first concept slide, showcasing the bold, emotionally resonant campaign she'd created. The room seemed to fade away as she spoke about authenticity, connection, and the moments that matter, the very things that had drawn her to Jack that day in traffic. When she finished her portion, there was a moment of silence before Sarah Wilson, Oasis's marketing director, spoke up. This is exactly what we've been looking for, she said, turning to her colleagues. They get us. The rest of the presentation flowed smoothly, with each team member building on Emily's foundation. By the time they concluded, the energy in the room was electric. Well, Martin Chen, Oasis's CEO, and no relation to Emily, said as they wrapped up, I think it's clear that Horizon understands our brand better than any agency we've met with. Unless my team has objections, I'm prepared to move forward with you as our agency of record." The Horizon team maintained their professional composure, but Emily could feel the excitement vibrating between them. They'd done it. After handshakes and promises of contract details to follow, the Oasis executives departed, leaving the Horizon team alone in the conference room. "We did it!" Diana exclaimed once the door closed, pumping her fist in the air. "Oasis is ours!" The team erupted in cheers and high fives, the weeks of pressure finally released in a moment of collective triumph. "Excellent work, everyone," Jack said, his usual reserve softened by evident pride. "This is a significant win for Horizon." His gaze lingered on Emily. "Particularly impressive for someone who's only been with us for 2 weeks." Emily felt her cheeks warm at the public praise. "It was a team effort," she said, but couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. "This calls for celebration," Jack announced. "Dinner tonight at Riviera on the company, 7 o'clock. The team cheered again, even louder this time. Riviera was one of Boston's most exclusive restaurants, the kind of place that required reservations months in advance, unless you were someone like Jack Reynolds. As the team dispersed, riding the high of their success back to their desks, Jack approached Emily. "Your concept was the heart of that pitch," he said quietly. "You should be proud." "Thank you for pushing me to make it better," Emily replied. "Your challenge made all the difference." Something shifted in Jack's expression, a softening, a hint of the man behind the CEO facade. Sometimes the right push at the right moment is all we need to find our best selves. The words hung between them, laden with meaning beyond the professional context. "I look forward to celebrating with the team tonight," Jack added, his tone returning to its usual professional cadence. 7 o'clock. As he walked away, Emily couldn't help but wonder if the celebration would mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. One where the traffic light between them might finally change from red to yellow, and perhaps eventually to green. The celebration dinner at Riviera was exactly as luxurious as expected. Private dining room, exquisite food, free-flowing champagne, and a gradual loosening of professional boundaries as the evening progressed. Emily sat across from Jack, trying not to read too much into the seating arrangement. Throughout dinner, she caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. Each time their eyes met, something electric passed between them. A shared secret, a private language established that day in traffic and growing more complex with each interaction. "Speech from the woman of the hour," Aidan called out after dessert arrived, raising his glass toward Emily. Emily laughed, slightly embarrassed by the spotlight. "I just built on the foundation you all created. Team effort, remember? False modesty," Diana declared. "Your concept won the account. Own it." Jack cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. "I believe a toast is in order." He stood, raising his glass. "To Emily, whose fresh perspective and talent have already made Horizon better, and to all of you for embracing new ideas and executing them brilliantly." The team cheered, clinking glasses around the table. As Emily met Jack's gaze across the crystal and candlelight, she saw something unguarded in his expression. Pride, yes, but something more personal that made her heart beat faster. Later, as the dinner wound down and team members began departing, Emily found herself alone with Jack while waiting for their respective Ubers. "Thank you for tonight," she said, wrapping her light jacket tighter against the cool evening air. "It was a wonderful celebration." "The team deserved it," Jack replied. "You deserved it." A moment of silence stretched between them, filled with all the things they couldn't say. "My car's here," Jack said, nodding toward a sleek black sedan that had pulled up. But instead of leaving, he hesitated. "Can I offer you a ride?" Emily knew she should refuse. Getting into a car alone with Jack after an evening of champagne and meaningful glances was dangerous territory. "My Uber should be here any minute," she said, checking her phone. It looks like there's high demand tonight, Jack observed, glancing at his own screen. Could be a long wait. As if on cue, Emily's phone chimed with a notification that her driver had cancelled. Jack raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing at his lips. Sometimes the universe sends signals. Or the Uber algorithm needs work, Emily countered, but she was already wavering. It's just a ride home, Emily, Jack said softly. The use of her name, gentle, almost intimate, decided her. Okay, thank you. Inside his car, the air felt charged with possibility. Jack gave the driver Emily's address, then settled back against the leather seat, careful to maintain a respectful distance between them. You're good with the team, he said after a moment of silence. They've accepted you completely. That doesn't always happen so quickly. They're easy to like, Emily replied. You've built a good culture at Horizon, Jack smiled. I try, though I suspect they've been giving you a hard time about our unusual introduction. Emily laughed softly. They have theories, many theories. I can imagine. Jack turned slightly to face her. Does it bother you, the speculation? Emily considered the question. Not really. It's human nature to be curious about connections between people. Connections, Jack repeated, his voice low. Is that what we have? The question hung in the air between them, unavoidable now that it had been voiced. I think we do, Emily admitted, though it's complicated by our professional relationship. Very complicated, Jack agreed, his eyes never leaving hers. I have rules about this sort of thing, good reasons for those rules. I've heard, Emily said, office gossip travels fast. Jack winced slightly. Of course they told you about Vanessa. Only the broad strokes, Emily assured him, and I understand the caution. I have my own rules too, such as never jeopardize my career for a relationship. Never let personal feelings cloud professional judgment. She paused. Never get involved with someone who can influence my future. Jack nodded slowly. Sensible rules. I thought so, Emily said, until I found myself writing my phone number down for a stranger in traffic. The confession lingered between them as the car turned onto Emily's street and slowed to a stop outside her apartment building. Well, Emily said, reaching for the door handle, thank you for the ride. Emily, Jack said quietly, stopping her with just her name. If circumstances were different, she turned back to him, heart pounding. If circumstances were different. For a moment, Jack's carefully maintained control seemed to waver. I would have texted you that very first day, not as your boss, but as the man who couldn't stop thinking about the woman who smiled at him in traffic. Emily's breath caught. And I would have answered. The possibility of what might have been, what could never be, filled the space between them. Good night, Jack, Emily said finally, breaking the spell. Good night, Emily, he replied, his voice carrying regret and resolve in equal measure. As she walked to her building, Emily didn't look back. Some traffic lights had to remain red, no matter how much you wished they would change. The next morning, Emily arrived at work, determined to maintain professional distance from Jack. Their moment in the car had come dangerously close to crossing lines that needed to remain uncrossed. Her resolve lasted until 11:30, when Jack appeared beside her desk. Do you have a minute? He asked, his tone purely professional. I'd like your input on something. Emily followed him not to his office as expected, but to a small conference room where architectural renderings were spread across the table. What's this? She asked, curious. Plans for our new offices, Jack explained. We're expanding to the 6th floor. I'd value your perspective on the layout for the marketing department. For the next 40 minutes, they discussed workspace design, creative environments, and collaborative spaces, all entirely appropriate topics that nevertheless felt like a thinly veiled excuse to spend time together. As they wrapped up, Jack hesitated. There's a charity gala this Saturday for the Boston Children's Innovation Fund. Horizon always sponsors a table. Normally Marcus would attend, but he's out of town at a conference. I wondered if you'd be interested in representing the marketing department. Emily knew she should decline. A gala meant formal attire, dim lighting and dancing, dangerous territory for their already complicated dynamic. "Who else from Horizon will be there?" she asked carefully. "Tyler, our financial director Sophia, and myself," Jack replied, equally careful. "It would be completely professional, a networking opportunity." Emily hesitated, weighing the risk against the opportunity. "All right," she said finally. "I'd be happy to attend." Jack's relief was visible. "Excellent. I'll have Tyler send you the details." As he gathered the architectural plans, his hand briefly brushed against hers, a touch that could have been accidental, but somehow didn't feel that way. "Thank you for your input on the designs," he said, his professional mask firmly back in place. "Your suggestions will improve the space significantly." Emily nodded, retreating behind her own professional facade. Happy to help. They were playing a dangerous game, finding excuses to interact while pretending those interactions were purely business-related. Emily knew it, and she suspected Jack knew it too. The question was how long they could maintain the charade before something, or someone, forced them to confront the truth. The Boston Children's Innovation Fund Gala was held at the historic Franklin Hotel, its ballroom transformed into a glittering wonderland of lights, flowers, and Boston's wealthiest philanthropists. Emily arrived separately from the Horizon team, stepping out of her Uber in a midnight blue gown that had consumed most of her first paycheck. The dress was simple but elegant, with a subtle shimmer that caught the light as she moved. Jack was speaking with an older couple near the entrance when he caught sight of her. For a moment, his carefully controlled expression slipped, revealing genuine appreciation before he schooled his features back to professional courtesy. "Emily," he said as she approached, "allow me to introduce Dr. and Mrs. Whitman. James runs the pediatric neurology department that our donation will support this year." Emily shook hands with the couple, falling easily into the professional networking that such events required. Yet she remained acutely aware of Jack beside her, his proximity, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way his tuxedo fit his broad shoulders perfectly. Throughout the evening they maintained a respectable distance, interacting primarily with other guests rather than each other. Yet Emily constantly felt Jack's attention, his awareness of her movements across the room mirroring her awareness of his. After dinner came dancing. Emily stood at the edge of the ballroom, watching couples glide across the floor when Jack appeared beside her. "Would it be inappropriate if I asked you to dance?" he asked quietly, one colleague to another. Emily knew it was a bad idea. Every step they took toward each other personally was a step away from the professional boundaries they needed to maintain. "Probably," she admitted, "but I'd say yes anyway." Jack's smile, the real one, not his professional mask, made her heart skip. "Then I'm asking." He led her to the dance floor, placing one hand properly at her waist while taking her hand with the other. They began to move with the music, maintaining a respectable distance between them that nevertheless felt more intimate than any dance Emily had experienced before. "People are watching us," Emily observed, noticing the curious glances from other attendees. "Let them," Jack replied, his voice low. "We're just two colleagues at a charity event." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Is that what we are, Jack?" The question hung between them as they moved across the floor, their bodies in perfect sync despite the complexity of their situation. "I don't know anymore," Jack admitted finally. "I've been telling myself that's all this is, but, Emily prompted when he didn't continue. Jack's hand tightened slightly at her waist. "But I find myself inventing reasons to see you, thinking about you when I should be focused on work, looking forward to those moments when we can just be Jack and Emily, not CEO and employee." The honesty of his confession took her breath away. "I do the same thing," she admitted. The music changed to a slower song, and Jack drew her slightly closer, still appropriate for colleagues, but just barely. "What are we doing, Emily?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the music. "Dancing around the obvious," she replied, literally and figuratively. A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Which is?" "That there's something between us." Something that started in traffic and hasn't stopped growing since. Jack nodded slowly. And what do we do about it? That was the question that had been haunting Emily for weeks. I don't know, she said honestly. Your rules exist for good reasons. So do mine. Yes, Jack agreed, his eyes never leaving hers. They do. As the song ended, they remained on the dance floor a moment longer than necessary, neither wanting to break the connection. I should mingle with some of the other donors, Jack said finally, reluctantly releasing her. But Emily? Yes? This conversation isn't over. As she watched him walk away, Emily knew they had reached a crossroads. Whatever happened next would change everything, for better or worse. The following Monday, the office was buzzing with a new rumor. Jack Reynolds had been seen dancing with Emily Chen at the charity gala, and they had looked far too comfortable together for mere colleagues. Emily did her best to ignore the whispers and focus on her work, but by lunchtime, Diana cornered her in the break room. So, Diana said without preamble, you and Jack at the gala, spill. Emily sighed. It was one dance, Diana, completely professional. Mm-hmm, Diana replied, clearly unconvinced. And the way he looked at you all night, was that professional too? You weren't even there, Emily pointed out. Tyler was, Diana countered, and Tyler notices everything. Before Emily could respond, her phone chimed with a text. She glanced down to see a message from Jack. My office, 2 p.m. We need to talk. Diana, reading over her shoulder, raised an eyebrow. Just colleagues, huh? Emily put her phone away, her stomach churning with anticipation and dread. It's probably about the Oasis follow-up. Sure it is, Diana said, patting her arm sympathetically. Just be careful, Em. Office romances are complicated enough without one person being the CEO. At 2 o'clock exactly, Emily knocked on Jack's office door, her professional mask firmly in place despite her racing heart. Come in, Jack called. He was standing by the window, his back to the door, hands clasped behind him. When he turned, his expression was more serious than Emily had ever seen it. Close the door, please, he said quietly. Emily complied, then stood waiting, uncertain what to expect. The board called me this morning, Jack began without preamble. They've heard rumors about us. Emily's heart sank. What kind of rumors? That we're involved romantically. That I gave you special treatment in hiring. That your rapid rise at Horizon is due to personal rather than professional factors. That's ridiculous, Emily protested. I earned my position here. I know that, Jack said firmly. But perception matters in business. The board is concerned about potential conflicts of interest and liability issues. Emily felt sick. Everything she'd feared was happening. Her professional reputation tarnished by personal connections. What did you tell them? That we have a strictly professional relationship, Jack replied, and that your work speaks for itself. Relief washed over her, followed quickly by a strange disappointment. Thank you. Jack ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. Emily, this is exactly why I have rules about personal involvement with employees. It's not just about past experiences, it's about protecting the company and the people who work here, including you. I understand, Emily said, though the understanding didn't lessen the ache in her chest. So what happens now? Jack moved closer, close enough that she could see the conflict in his eyes. Professionally, nothing changes. You continue doing excellent work, and Horizon benefits from your talent. And personally, Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack's expression softened with regret. Personally, we need to be more careful. No more dances, no more rides home, no more private meetings that aren't strictly business-related. Each word felt like a step backward, erasing the tentative progress they'd made towards something more than a professional relationship. I understand, Emily said again, straightening her shoulders. Is that all, Mr. Reynolds? The formal address, a deliberate return to professional distance, made Jack wince. Yes, Miss Chen. Thank you for your time. Tutki. As Emily turned to leave, Jack called her name once more. Emily. She paused, hand on the doorknob, not trusting herself to look back at him. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "Don't be," she replied. "We both knew the traffic light was red for a reason." She left his office with her head high, refusing to let anyone see how much the conversation had affected her. She had a job to do, a job she loved and had earned through her own merit. Personal disappointments couldn't be allowed to interfere with that. Yet as she returned to her desk, Emily couldn't help feeling that something precious had been lost, a possibility, a connection, a road not taken. The question now was whether she could find her way forward without constantly looking back at what might have been. Over the next month, Emily and Jack maintained strict professional boundaries. Their interactions were limited to team meetings and necessary work discussions, each exchange carefully neutral despite the lingering tension between them. Emily threw herself into her work, proving her value beyond any doubt as the Oasis campaign launched to tremendous success. Her team respected her more with each project, and even board members who had questioned her hiring now acknowledged her talent. Meanwhile, Jack became increasingly distant, working longer hours and delegating tasks he would normally handle personally. The entire office noticed his withdrawal, but only Emily understood its true cause. Everything changed when Horizon's biggest potential client, Meridian Tech, requested a meeting with the marketing team. During the presentation, the client's CEO, Richard Coleman, took a particular interest in Emily's ideas. "Impressive work," Coleman said afterward, handing Emily his card. "We should discuss this further, perhaps over dinner." Emily politely declined, but the interaction didn't escape Jack's notice. Later that day, he called her into his office. "Coleman seems impressed with you," Jack said, his tone carefully professional. "He was impressed with the concept," Emily corrected. Jack studied her for a moment. "He's known for poaching talent from agencies after they pitch. Just be cautious." "Are you warning me as my boss or as something else?" Emily asked boldly. The question hung between them, breaking their carefully maintained professional facade. "Both," Jack admitted quietly. That simple word shifted something between them. Before either could speak further, Jack's assistant interrupted with an urgent call. The next evening, Emily was working late when Jack appeared at her desk, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Not here. Somewhere private." They ended up at a small cafe several blocks from the office, sitting in a corner booth far from other patrons. "I've been thinking about us," Jack began, "about the impossible situation we've created." "We haven't created anything," Emily pointed out. "We've been completely professional." "Professional on the outside," Jack corrected. "But I think about you constantly, and I suspect you think about me too." Emily couldn't deny it. "What's your point, Jack?" "My point is that we're lying to ourselves and everyone else by pretending there's nothing between us." He leaned forward. "The board meeting yesterday made me realize something. I've spent 7 years building Horizon, making it my entire life. But for what? To be forever bound by rules that keep me from pursuing what might actually make me happy?" Emily's heart raced. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't want to wonder what if anymore." Jack took a deep breath. "I'm going to restructure the company, move the marketing department under Marcus's direct supervision, removing you from my direct chain of command." "You would do that?" Emily asked, stunned. "For a chance to see where this could go?" "Yes." Jack reached across the table, touching her hand. "If that's what you want too." Emily intertwined her fingers with his, finally acknowledging what they'd both known since that day in traffic. "It is." As they left the cafe, walking close but not quite touching, Jack's phone rang. It was Tyler, panic in his voice. "The Meridian presentation files are corrupted. The backup drive is missing too." Jack paled. "The presentation is tomorrow morning." "I have copies on my personal drive," Emily said quickly. "I can access them from home." "I'll drive you," Jack decided. In Jack's car, the crisis created a strange intimacy, a shared purpose that transcended their personal complications. As they pulled up to Emily's apartment, the heavens opened in a sudden downpour. "Wait here," Emily said. "I'll get the files and be right back." "I'm coming with you," Jack insisted. "Two computers will transfer the files faster." They dashed through the rain to Emily's building, arriving soaked and laughing despite the crisis. In her apartment, Emily quickly located the files while Jack made emergency calls to the team. As they worked side by side to restore the presentation, Emily was struck by how natural it felt, as if they'd been partners for years rather than colleagues keeping their distance. When the crisis was finally resolved near midnight, they stood in Emily's small kitchen, the professional urgency fading into something more personal. "I should go," Jack said, though he made no move toward the door. "It's still pouring," Emily observed, "and you're soaked. At least let me dry your jacket." As she took his wet jacket, their hands brushed. The simple touch ignited something that had been building for weeks. Jack's gaze met hers, the professional masks finally dropping completely. "Emily," he whispered, her name a question and an answer all at once. She moved closer, hesitating just inches from him. "Are you sure about this? About us?" Instead of answering with words, Jack closed the distance between them, his lips finding hers in a kiss that felt both inevitable and surprising. Emily responded immediately, all the tension and longing of the past weeks released in a moment of perfect connection. When they finally broke apart, Jack rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since that day in traffic." Emily smiled. "Me too." The world outside, Horizon, the board, professional complications seemed distant and unimportant compared to the reality of finally being honest about what they felt for each other. "Stay," Emily whispered. "Not because of the rain, not because of work. Just stay." Jack's answer was another kiss, deeper than the first, breaking down the final barriers between boss and employee, between professional and personal, between strangers in traffic and two people finding their way to something real. The traffic light had finally turned green. 3 months later, Horizon Digital's office was buzzing with excitement for the company's annual holiday party. The event, held at the prestigious Gardner Museum, was the social highlight of the year for employees and their guests. Emily stood before the mirror in her apartment, smoothing the emerald green dress she'd splurged on for the occasion. Behind her, Rachel gave an appreciative whistle. "Jack won't know what hit him," her roommate declared. Emily smiled nervously. "Tonight's a big night. It's our first official company event together." After their breakthrough during the Meridian crisis, Jack had moved quickly to restructure Horizon's organization. Marketing now reported to Marcus Thompson, who had been promoted to Chief Marketing Officer, removing Emily from Jack's direct chain of command. Jack had also been transparent with the board about his relationship with Emily, presenting the reorganization as the ethical solution to a personal situation. There had been whispers, of course, and a few raised eyebrows. But as weeks passed, and both continued to excel professionally while maintaining appropriate workplace behavior, the initial skepticism had largely faded. "How are things with the team?" Rachel asked, adjusting Emily's necklace. "Better than I expected," Emily admitted. "Diana and the others have been surprisingly supportive. It helps that Jack and I keep things strictly professional at work." The doorbell rang and Rachel grinned. "Speaking of your CEO boyfriend," Jack stood in the doorway, devastatingly handsome in a classic black tuxedo. His expression as he saw Emily was worth every penny she'd spent on the dress. "You look beautiful," he said simply. At the museum, they were greeted by curious but mostly accepting glances from Horizon employees. Jack kept a respectful distance, mingling with guests, while Emily caught up with her team, but their eyes found each other across the room with magnetic frequency. Later, during a quiet moment on the museum's terrace, Jack took Emily's hand. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket, "an early Christmas gift." Inside was a delicate silver keychain in the shape of a traffic light with a key attached. "Is this," Emily began. "A key to my place," Jack confirmed. "I thought it was time." Emily smiled, touching the traffic light charm. "From red to green." "It wasn't the easiest route," Jack acknowledged, "but I wouldn't change how we got here." As they rejoined the party, Diana approached them, champagne in hand. "You two are disgustingly happy," she observed, though her smile was genuine. "Who would have thought a traffic jam could lead to this?" "Sometimes the unexpected detours lead to the best destinations," Jack replied, his arm slipping around Emily's waist in a rare public display of affection. The evening concluded with Jack asking Emily to dance, this time without hesitation or concern for appearances. As they moved across the floor, Emily realized how far they'd come from that first cautious dance at the charity gala. "What are you thinking?" Jack asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "That sometimes breaking the rules is worth the risk," she replied, "and that I'm glad we were brave enough to see where this road would lead." Jack pulled her closer, no longer concerned with maintaining professional distance. "I have something to confess," he said quietly. "That day in traffic, when you held up your number, I memorized it immediately. I knew even then that you were someone special." Emily laughed softly. "And I saved your contact as Traffic before I even knew your name." As the music continued around them, Emily reflected on their unlikely journey. From strangers exchanging smiles through car windows to colleagues fighting their attraction to partners who had finally found their way to each other. It hadn't been the direct route. There had been red lights and detours, caution signs and near collisions, but in the end they had navigated the complicated intersection of professional and personal to arrive somewhere neither had expected, but both had secretly hoped for. "I love you," Jack said, the words simple but profound in their certainty. "I love you too," Emily replied, no longer concerned with who might be watching or what they might think. Some connections, they had discovered, were worth changing the rules for. Some traffic lights were meant to eventually turn green, and sometimes the most unexpected encounters led to the most meaningful journeys. As the year drew to a close, Emily Chen and Jack Reynolds had discovered that the road ahead, while never perfectly straight or entirely predictable, was one they were ready to travel together, wherever it might lead.